any of these events, like a presentation like this. Oops, did I do that? Sorry, guys. Sorry, I think I must have pressed the button by accident. My bad. Like I said, ask questions. The professionals want to answer those questions and want to help you as much as possible during the process. So don't be afraid to ask any questions at all. Following up. So elements of a good follow-up message. You want to make sure that it is detailed, that it's timely, it's memorable, it's concise, it's purposeful, and it's persistent. So for example, for myself, I always like to include a personal touch in my follow-up message and kind of highlight parts of a conversation that I had with a professional. So I know like during my interview process, you know, like I said, keeping the personal conversations light is definitely important because you want to make sure that you're touching upon all the important information that you want to get out of this networking experience. But, you know, for example, when I was interviewing, me and my interviewer, it came about because I had something on my resume related to music that we both really were interested in this part of music. So other than, you know, putting in just, oh, thank you for talking to me about audit, I also spoke about, hey, like it was great also to know that two people interested in accounting are also interested in music, something along those lines. You kind of want to make it a little more personal if you can. So now that we've prepared your resume and your brand and you've networked just a little, now it is time to ace your interview. So there are 4 no's in interviewing. You want to know the firm, yourself, the interview process, and you want to make sure that the interviewer remembers you. So going into this interview process, you'll definitely want to have a strategy, and you want to make sure that you do your research, that you know your resume well, and that you can demonstrate that you understand the interview process and can make proper connections. So it's imperative in the virtual setting to read all email instructions, to understand technology, timing, any setup that you need. My suggestion is read through the instructions at least 24 hours before your interview to allow time for questions or any technology blunders that you might run into. And this will allow you to reach out to the recruiter like myself, or maybe your interviewer or interviewer coordinator with any questions. Knowing the firm. So you'll want to do your research prior to your interview and make sure that you have a general understanding on what the company does, as well as a clear idea of the culture. So on campus job boards, you'll see many positions and locations posted, and I'm sure that a lot of you will be applying to multiple positions throughout this recruiting process. So you want to make sure that you are aware of the job and the position, location, and all the details of the job that you're interviewing for. It's really easy to get, you know, mixed up with different types of firms or different types of positions, but you want to make sure that you are confident before going into the interview, because nothing would be more awkward than going into an interview for one position and thinking it's another. We don't want to do that. So knowing yourself, you definitely want to make sure you're familiar, like I said, what is on your resume, and you can elaborate if you need to. I would also think of certain areas on your resume that you want to highlight during the interview to help you stand out. So for example, KPMG, we want a candidate who can take initiative, who can learn quickly, communicate effectively, possesses leadership abilities, has confidence, is a team player, and most importantly, we want somebody who has a positive attitude. So you'll want to ask yourself, how can I emphasize my experiences to highlight some of the qualities that I just mentioned? So while working from home obviously can be more casual, you still want to treat your interview as a professional event. So dress should be business professional unless otherwise stated. And you want to follow the rules above for setting a professional workspace around you. So, an element that is not a factor to worry about for in-person interviews is going to be your background, your setting. So, equally as important as your attire, you want to make sure you have a professional backdrop and that everything is tidy and looks in place. Some career service offices are offering spaces to rent out for students going through the interview process. So if that's something that CSUN offers, I definitely suggest maybe reaching out to them and maybe renting a room out for any interviews, just to ensure that you don't really have any distractions, that everything is clean and ready to go. So you want to log in no more than 5 minutes before your interview time, and your interviewer will let you into the virtual room at the start of your interview. And, unfortunately with technology, no matter how much you prepare, unfortunately, there's going to be technology issues. Possibly. There could still be glitches. So, if your sound stops working, if your video freezes, if you accidentally start recording something like I am, don't worry about it. And your interviewer's there to help you. So they'll help you troubleshoot anything that you need. Another important thing, make sure that your roommate or your family or anybody that you're living with knows that you're logged on for an interview, so they can give you that space and keep the noise down. So no matter how much you prepare, surprises do happen. We have surprise visitors, like you have roommates, maybe kids, maybe pets. That can still happen, but just make sure you're doing your best to avoid those situations and limit those unwanted distractions. Another great interview tip, make sure you grab a pen and paper and jot down any notes. This would be great to follow up for questions that you can ask your interviewer after. Maybe there was an interesting point they brought up. You don't want to forget it. Definitely write down notes. The interviewer will know what you're doing. They won't think it's weird. Don't worry. And, if you're speaking directly with an employer, always, and it's in person, or, if you are meeting one-on-one, maybe for a coffee chat, always have a copy of your resume on hand so that you can refer, or they can refer to any past experiences that you have. So knowing the interview process and the interview structure, you definitely have an easy process with KPMG. It's very simple. So we provide 2 30-minute back-to-back interviews on the same day, and that's typically going to be with a manager or a partner. And you will also be interviewing with somebody at the office location that you applied to. So that's a great opportunity for you to ask more office-specific questions. Like, for example, when I interviewed for my internship, I went to the University of Alabama, but I started at the New York office. So it was really great for me to meet those professionals and get to connect with people from the New York office rather than maybe somebody from the Birmingham office, because then I could ask those more specific questions that, the professionals in the Birmingham office wouldn't necessarily have the knowledge of. So during the interview, it's really important that you show off the brand that you've worked so hard to build for yourself. So you want to make sure you're engaging with your interviewer and expressing interest in what they're saying. Always wear a smile and stay positive. When answering questions, you want to speak clearly and thoughtfully. So we want to know about your experience and how they prepared you for the role you're interviewing for. Be sure to listen carefully and ensure you're answering the specific questions that you're asked. And you can provide details and examples to support your claims, and always speak from actual experiences. Never speak from a hypothetical situation standpoint. So when asking— I
found this on the web.
Oops, sorry. Another technological blunder. When asking questions, you want to be prepared. So your interviewer will prompt you to ask questions, usually towards the end of the interview. So make sure you take the time to really think about, what you want to ask them prior to the interview. Avoid asking questions just to ask them. This is really your opportunity to get to know your interviewer and the position that you are applying to. So take full advantage of that. And when ending the interview, you definitely want to thank the interviewer for their time and be sure to reiterate your interest in the firm. Best practice is to ask the interviewer for their contact information so you can send that follow-up email. And speaking of follow-up emails, in our current, environment, email is going to be your best bet for communicating in regards to sending thank yous. So, elements of a good follow-up, you want to be detailed, timely, memorable, concise, purposeful, and persistent. So now that you've learned, about building your brand, you might be saying, well, what opportunities are there for me at KPMG? So your graduation plan and timeline will determine what opportunities here at KPMG are available to you. So you want to ask yourself, what is the most probable timeline for my graduation? And when will I have those 150 CPA credits to be eligible for the exam? And how many summers, do you have left before you graduate? So if you are graduating this summer, awesome, you can apply to our full-time associate positions. If you have one summer left, maybe look into those internship opportunities coming up. And then if you have 2 summers left or more, we have those pre-ID programs and our Embark Scholars programs, which is really going to be awesome. I'm going to dive a little bit more into our Embark Scholars program and our Rise Leadership Institute that I have listed here. So our Rise Leadership Institute, it's a multiple day leadership program for engineering, IT, or any other related field. So this opportunity is for high performing college freshmen who identify as a person of color, a veteran, a person with a disability, anyone in the LGBTQ community, and or any first generation college students. And then we have our Embark Scholars multi-year internship program. And with exposure to our audit, tax advisory, and our business process group online to help educate scholars on how their career interests align best with the services that we render. So this opportunity is going to be for high-performing sophomores who identify as underrepresented within the professional services industry. So as always, you can reach out to me if you have any questions or want to clarify your graduation timeline or any plans have shifted. Happy to answer those. Recruiting with KPMG. So all of KPMG's open opportunities are pre-ID internship, full-time. All of those internship and full-time opportunities are going to be posted on our website, kpmgcampus.com, under the Search Jobs tab. So here you can search for any open applications across the country at our various offices with our many practices and service lines. So if we don't have a position posted on our website, that means we're not recruiting for that position at the time. However, if you're still looking for opportunities, even if you're graduating this summer, we have a bunch of more opportunities that will be opening for our fall recruiting season. And if you are graduating, you still have up to a year after your graduation date to participate in our campus recruiting. So you're still going to be eligible to apply for those positions, even if or go through that fall recruiting process. Don't worry about that. So our application is fairly easy. It really only takes 10 to 15 minutes. And after you're submitting your application on the KPMG website, you might receive an email that prompts you to take the Pymetrics Assessment, which I'm going to discuss in more details now. I also just want to highlight, as you can see on this slide, our deadline for all of our applications are February 20th, so coming up in just about 2 weeks, as well as our Embark Scholarship is going to be that February 20th deadline. If you are a freshman and you're interested in any of the RISE programs, that is going to be on February 25th, our applications close. So that's all going to be on kpmgcampus.com, which I highly suggest you guys check out. But I'm going to now go into more detail about the Pymetrics Assessment that I just mentioned. So you must complete the Pymetrics Assessment to officially complete your application and be considered for a job. So these are fun, gamified exercises that will help us get a better understanding of your cognitive, emotional, and social skills. So don't worry, there's no right or wrong answers, but I just want to emphasize, you must complete this assessment in order for your application to be considered, because your application will be considered incomplete if this is not done. So this assessment, it takes about 25 minutes, and you must finish it by our application deadline or 4 days after you receive the link, whichever comes first. So for example, I just want to make this clear because I would really hate to see anybody be, have their application not be considered because of something as silly as a Pymetrics assessment. So what I would suggest is just completing it as soon as you get the link. And this also is due on the 20th at midnight as well. So if maybe you're taking your time and trying to figure out what position is right for you, and you apply on the 19th, that Pymetrics is going to be due on the 20th, just as the application deadlines are. You're not going to have that 4-day period. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because, unfortunately, we have had students in the past just across the country who thought they had 4 days to complete it, but unfortunately it's closed and we cannot make an exception to open it back up. So please just keep that in mind. So it is imperative to build your brand when searching, for your first job or any job. But the truth is, building your brand, it never ends. So all of the branding tips and tricks that I've spoken about today, it's definitely something you can carry with you for the remainder of your professional career. So be sure to always stay consistent in who you are and never stop building your brand. So on that note, I'm going to pass it back off to our professionals, just so that they can give you a little background on their experience with recruiting or just any other tips and tricks that they have. So whoever wants to start first, go ahead, the floor is yours.
I can go first. So I started recruiting as a freshman, so I started really early on. And honestly, from recruiting then and then still, helping my friends. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but I did graduate from CSUN last May. So since I started recruiting as a freshman and then helping my friends through that same recruiting process through and through, I think one of the most helpful things is kind of what you're doing now, is attending these meetings. And I know it's so much harder to do that in like a virtual setting to kind of get your name known. But I think just kind of doing that little extra step and like doing what the clubs really offer and going to those events for like networking or just meeting someone, because that helps you, one, get comfortable for meet the firms, because especially now since online, it's awkward in those 10 minutes that you get with someone. So that way you can get more comfortable pre-hand that, and in that way you can start building those connections, because you want to start building those connections now versus that night of meet the firms. And also don't really be afraid, like if you really feel like you are connecting with someone, don't be afraid to kind of extend another coffee chat, to have another chat, because I know it's kind of dense right now. So I think just trying to make your way in networking is really useful, and trying to put yourself out there. I know it's kind of hard, especially if you're introverted, because I was that at the time too. So just trying to push yourself out there, because it really helps.
Yeah, I would add on the like kind of reaching out to make connections. Something that I've seen from my side of it, something that I think works really well, is when students shoot me an email and have like one specific question, like it's easier for me to respond and engage on that than if it's just kind of like, hi, it was nice to like hear from you. Maybe we could like connect sometime. Like I'm probably less likely to respond to that, just because it's going to take me more like to think about what I'm going to say and everything. And everybody's just so busy and you have so many messages going around all the time. But if somebody asked me like a specific question that they were wondering about KPMG, about my experience, about whatever it is, even if it's about like my dog that ran by in the background, like that's easier for me to just like shoot back an email and be like, oh yeah, like whatever the response is. And then that kind of starts that conversation going. So I think that's just something that I've seen the students that I tend to connect with the most. That's kind of what they've had in common, is that they're reaching out on something that is kind of a conversation starter. Just anything that you can do to make this whole virtual situation easier, I think helps.
My advice would,
Oh, sorry, you can go.
okay. My advice would probably be just, if something, doesn't line up with exactly, the timeline. Like for me, I graduated early and was recruiting in an off-peak time, but I just communicated that with the recruiter, and, they really helped me through the process and just made sure that, I was on the right track with what my plans were. Like I wanted to transfer to the LA office, and, the recruiters really just, my campus recruiter helped me get from where I was to where I wanted to be. So I was just really appreciative of that.
Hi, everyone. So I remember the recruiting process was very hard for me. I started off at a community college and transferred into CSUN my junior year. And I remember that whole process was just so overwhelming because I literally just decided I wanted to be an accounting major. And then coming into CSUN, everyone's like, oh, you got to start recruiting. You got to choose audit or tax. And I'm like, what is going on? I don't know anything. Like, please, I just chose accounting. Like, don't add more things to my plate. So if you're a transfer student, stay calm. Some of my advice in recruiting is join clubs if you can. It's great that you guys are here joining the first AA meeting. It's a great step that you're taking. But yeah, join clubs, join AA. I was in VITA Alpha Psi, so you can join that club too. It's great. Meet as many people as you can. I know that you guys are going into school starting next week, so definitely like take advantage, like start meeting more people, especially in the accounting program. And with the firms, the service line, I always remember what professionals are always saying: do your research before you go into recruiting and all that stuff. And I never really knew what that meant. Like, go learn about the firm and their history and when they started, who are the founders. Like, I just didn't know how to approach that. And after the recruiting process, I think for me, what I wish I did more of was doing research on the different service lines that the firm offers. So people are always saying, oh, join audit, join tax advisory. And with that, I wish I knew that, oh, it's not just tax that they're offering, it goes deeper. There's business tax services, mergers, acquisition, you can work with state, you can work with international, like there's so much more than just tax and audit. So I would, yeah, definitely go on our website and see the different service lines that we offer. So it's not just so vague, because like it's like, oh, okay, tax, oh, audit. It's like, no, there's so much more. Like, do your research on that. Meet as many people as you can. Go to all the club events that they have. It's a great way to meet all the professionals and more students and people that are going through the same things you're going through. And what else? And communication is so key. I remember I was working, I was a full-time student, I was also working, and then on top of that, recruiting, and I just transferred into CSUN. Like, oh my gosh, wow, so overwhelming. So I would recommend like communicate well, especially with your current employer. Let them know like, hey, in 2 weeks, like I have very important school events that I have to go to. So communicate with them. That way you can attend as many events as you can. And yeah, so those are my advice. If anyone wants to add on to that.
No, that's perfect. I really appreciate all of you sharing your experiences and giving some very sound advice. I definitely agree. I was similar. I started the recruiting process late in the game. I changed my major to accounting this summer going into senior year of college. I was just a general business major. So yeah, it was rough. I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a senior going into this recruiting process. Everyone's been doing this since they're a freshman. I'm not gonna be on anyone's radar because nobody knows who I am. I don't know anything. I didn't even know what the Big Four was. It was rough. But I definitely dove in, I showed my face at events, I networked as much as I could, and I eventually found my home here in my senior year. So if you're, nervous, maybe you had a similar situation that you transferred later, or, you weren't in the recruiting process, or maybe you're a senior and just changed your major like I did. Don't worry, because you have plenty of time to make those connections. As long as you are, making those meaningful conversations, showing your face at events, asking questions, following up, you don't have to worry. We just definitely here at KPMG, we want somebody that's very interested in our firm and that's putting in effort. And, that's all we can really ask y'all of. So that was definitely some great sound advice. I just brought the QR code back on the screen. I know we had maybe some people join a little later, perfectly fine. I just, again, want to make sure that you all are in our recruiting system, just so that you guys can all get our updates on all of the upcoming events and just more information about the firm. So I would love if you all could check in if you haven't already. And on that note, I definitely want to open up the floor for any general questions that anybody has, either for me or for any of the professionals. We would love to answer anything that y'all have. So anybody have any questions, feel free to come off mute, maybe write in the chat if you're a little shy, perfectly fine. Kyle, you have a question?
Yeah, so did most of you guys intern at KPMG before taking on a full-time position, or what was that sort of road like?
Sure. So I interned before I started full-time, just because when I was going as a senior, I had the intentions of going to grad school. So I was eligible for an internship rather than a full-time position. So I did intern, and, with our internship programs, you are definitely treated like a first-year associate. They want you to dive in, get that experience, make sure that, this is something that you're ready for. They definitely prepare you in any way they can. And they have all intentions and really want to, invite you as an associate if you really make those impressions, work hard, and just, I know you guys probably hear this all the time, but be a sponge. It's so true. Make sure you're taking notes, asking questions, just be open. You're not really expected to know anything going in, other than, basic accounting, which we know that because of your classes, but you definitely learn so much on the job. And even though I interned first, there are definitely plenty of our associates that didn't intern with our firm that had come to our events and networked and everything, and they ended up securing an associate position. So, if you didn't intern at first, or maybe you're not eligible because it is your senior year or something, do not worry at all. You will still be just as prepared for the position if you interned or didn't. I don't know if anyone else wants to add.
Yeah, I did not do an internship myself because I was working while I was going to CSUN, which I'm sure a lot of you are. And I didn't want to have that kind of awkward where I was like leaving my job for the internship period and then trying to go back and either find a new job or return to my existing job. But I think what I would say just in general is if you are working, no matter what your work experience is, I don't care if you're like making sandwiches or if you're like a bookkeeper and it's like more applicable, all of them are valuable. Like any experience that you have in the working world, I love hearing about people's different experiences in their jobs and how you as an individual can bring something to the table in that role. So something I ask a lot in interviews is what do you think you could improve at your current job if like you were the CEO of it? And I just like to hear different people's perspectives on, how they would make things better. So just don't, I guess my long story short, what I'm saying is don't feel like you're coming in, to the point that was just made behind anyone just because maybe you didn't do an internship. Whatever experiences you've had are just different. And that's part of what makes us great.
Awesome, thanks. I see Heidi, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to know, I have two questions. So
Sure.
one, could you guys kind of explain like the different things that you guys do, like tax versus audit and so on? And my second question is like, do you guys look for a lot of work experience when it comes to internships and stuff?
So I'll answer your second question first, and then I can let our professionals kind of give you that background more on what their roles entail. But for experience, not necessarily. We definitely want to see that, you know, maybe you didn't have the opportunity to have an internship prior to this one that you're applying for. We just want to see that you are a student on campus that's getting involved in organizations, that's taking on leadership roles, that's dedicated to their studies. So, you know, if you don't have necessarily a ton of experience on your resume, don't be nervous or worried. Just make sure that you're highlighting all of, you know, the main points that I mentioned earlier, kind of about what we look for in our potential hirees. Just make sure that you are getting as involved as you can in the roles that you do have or the organizations that you are in. We love leaders. We love people who like to dive in and get involved. So if it's not necessarily professional work, we definitely are going to be looking at some of those experiences that you have on campus or any leadership roles that you take on otherwise. But I can pass it off to our professionals if they want to, you know, get into more details about, you know, what their day-to-day looks like, or maybe just kind of a background on their service line. So pass it off to y'all.
I guess having the longest tenure, I might be the best position to answer this one too. I think we talked a little bit already about the different service lines, having so many service lines within them as well. But I think the first thing I'll say is you don't have to know where you want to end your career now. If you come into KPMG and audit and, you know, you do a little bit more research and you think tax might be interesting to you, or, you know, advisory is a whole world of, you could be like in the very like technical accounting advisory service group, or you could be in deal advisory and be doing like more like financy transaction planning type stuff. So there's a lot of different routes you can take, and we see all the time people, you know, I have friends that were in audit that are now in deal advisory or have joined like our valuation specialist group. So it doesn't have to be super linear, and you can kind of learn as you join the firm as well. But from like a baseline, I think it's just like, is there anything right now that piques your interest? You know, if you're talking, or even the people, if you're connecting more with the people that happen to be on the audit team, or if you're connecting more with people on the tax team, then maybe that's where you want to start, and you can kind of decide where to go from there. But from a work perspective, I think audit, maybe you communicate more with your clients directly earlier in your career, where tax, maybe that's something that happens a little bit later. And advisory, again, like it really just depends on like where you're sitting in the advisory group, because there's so many different things. But that might be more of like, does forensics like trigger something that you think you'd be really interested in, or do you like the finance side of accounting more, and maybe you want to try to start in transaction advisory? So I think just like if you kind of visit the website, read a little bit about which each of the things are, and then see where you kind of just have that gut feeling of where you might want to start, you can always branch out from there. So yeah, you know, I've been here for what, 8 years now at KPMG, and I still don't know everything that we do. It's kind of crazy.
Thanks.
Yes, definitely encourage you, and that was great, to visit kpmgcampus.com, and we kind of outline all of our service lines and have more details about more specific roles in there, which is going to be very, very helpful because, you know, as mentioned, we have many different sectors of kind of what we go into here. I see John has your hand raised.
Hi, I just have a question. What is your like company culture like when it comes to growth, work culture. Can you explain more about that, please? Thank you.
Sure. So KPMG is definitely a place where we want our professionals to thrive and grow in any way that they can. Everyone has been so supportive of everything that I've ever done in the firm. Even, my transition from audit to university recruiting, everyone has been super supportive. And even during my time in audit, I constantly have the opportunity to be challenged. I constantly have the opportunity to learn through different trainings. But overall, we just want our people to be happy here at the firm. And that's something that is very much held to a high standard. We want our professionals to do anything that they can to be happy and learn and grow constantly. We do have, in our service lines, we do have that ladder set up of how you can grow in your role, how you can get promoted. There's definitely a clear pipeline to that. We want our professionals to pursue their CPA. They'll support you with providing you the materials and, connecting you with maybe a CPA buddy that has gone through the process that can help guide you. So very supportive. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. Any of our professionals want to chime in, but that's been my experience for sure.
I think just starting on, since I started in September, they're really helpful in kind of helping you know what's going on, or basically teaching you, because even though I did my internships, I knew a little bit. I remembered a couple things from my internship, but I still don't really know. And that's normal with a lot of starting associates. And what's kind of helpful is that when you start, you get two kind of mentors. So you have your peer PML, which I think it's like peer mentor leader, something like that. And they're kind of with you and helping, guiding you and making your goals with you throughout your time or as your career is progressing. And then you have TC, which is like a transitional coach, and they kind of help you when you in the first couple months as you log on. So if you have any questions, literally anything, you can throw it at them, and then they're really helpful. And I feel like I've been really lucky with my teams because I ask a lot of questions, because I'm still trying to figure everything out, and they're all so helpful because they're honestly rather you ask a lot of questions and be supportive in that way than you're just stuck in one area, So I think that's what's helpful in I would say our culture is kind of like that, like everyone's always like hands-on with you.
And I don't know, John, if your question was related like specifically to the GROW initiative, which I think is also part of our diversity initiatives. But we do have, it's kind of nice because we have the overarching, from a firm like top level down, we have a lot of initiatives towards diversity and inclusion. But I think the ones for me, at least, that seem to be more impactful are the local, chapters of each group. So we have all of our different diversity groups, and I think they're called business resource groups. And you can join at your local level and participate in the events that are going on and be supportive of your peers. And then I also just really appreciate that we have the ability to kind of start our own groups too. So if there isn't one that exists, you always have the option to like start your own like club or diversity group and kind of grow it from there. And I think that's really cool to see all the new life coming into the firm, and like what people are focused on and who wants to kind of join together and make sure that everybody feels like they have a group that they can talk to about their own unique set of circumstances and challenges. So that's, I think the firm-wide diversity initiatives are fantastic and obviously really necessary, but the local ones are the ones that really are meaningful on like a day-to-day basis, and our local groups are great.
I couldn't have said it better. Completely agree and love all the initiatives that we have at the firm. I know we have a minute left. So I don't want to, go over everyone's time. I know we all have some busy schedules. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for having us. And like I said, if you want to join our recruiting, make your profile by scanning that QR code if you want to get any updates on any of our events or anything. I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and I really invite you guys, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me with anything. And I really appreciate you all taking the time to learn more about KPMG. And yes, thank you guys so much. I'm really excited to get to know all of you a little bit better and kind of get to learn more about CSUN and all the amazing students here. So thanks again so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Shelby. Appreciate it.
That's great.
I just want to repeat the announcements before we end this meeting. So until February 25, we extended our table setting hours. So